Let's jump right into this explainer. Now, if you study theater history, you already know about the evolution of the American musical, right? You know how it morphed from those grand 19th century European-style operettas into the snappy, syncopated Broadway hits of the 20th century. But today, we're zooming in on the ultimate mirror for that entire journey. We are talking about Harry Bache Smith. He was this incredibly prolific theater and literary collaborator who essentially bridged that massive gap. We're going to unpack exactly how he pulled it off.
To really get Smith, we have to look at these two totally contradictory myths that kind of haunted his 50-year career. On one hand, you've got myth number one, the uber librettist, this wonder kid with superhuman wit who could just churn out musicals at the speed of light. But then there's myth number two, the commercial hack, who just mass-produced recycled plots and dusty old jokes for easy money. The truth? Well, it sits somewhere right in the middle. And honestly, it's that exact tension that makes his story so absolutely vital to the history of Broadway.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. From newsroom to the stage. 2. Defining the American operetta. 3. Collaborating with Broadway legends. 4. The master collector. And finally 5. The legacy of Harry Bache Smithing. All right, let's get into it.
Section 1. From newsroom to the stage.
Okay, picture the fast-paced, chaotic world of late 19th century Chicago. That's where we're starting. Born in 1860, Smith moved to this booming city as a kid. By the 1870s, he was already hustling as a theater critic, a publicist, and a reporter for the Chicago Daily News. But the guy wanted real, practical experience, you know? So in 1879, he literally goes on tour as a chorus boy in a Gilbert and Sullivan company. He was a sponge out there, taking mental notes on exactly what made a live audience laugh or cheer, and this unique combo, the high-pressure journalism mixed with on-the-ground stage work, gave him a ridiculously practical education. His days in the newsroom directly influenced his dramatic writing style, mainly because it taught him what the ticket-buying public actually wanted to see. And it paid off, because by 1884, his very first operetta, Rosita, premiered.
He built a crazy reputation almost immediately. Listen to this quote from the Matinee Girl. They say he writes them two at a time, one with each hand, and numbers the pages with his feet as he throws them to the floor to avoid confusion. I love that. Why this matters is that those gritty newspaper days taught him the single most valuable lesson of his entire career, how to write fast and how to absolutely always meet a deadline. He wasn't precious about his art at all. If a star needed a brand new topical song by morning, Smith would just sit down, dash it off, and have it waiting for them.
Section 2. Defining the American operetta. 3. That's it. 3 weeks. That is the mere amount of time it took Harry Bache Smith to write the entire libretto for the 1890 smash hit, Robin Hood. He collaborated with composer Reginald De Koven on this, and while De Koven took 3 months to write the music, Smith hammered out the words in just 3 weeks, and Robin Hood went on to become one of the most popular American operettas in history. It played continuously for 20 years. To put that commercial success into perspective, Smith personally earned $225,000 in royalties from this one show alone. That was an absolute fortune back then.
But what's really fascinating here is how Smith acted like a chameleon, adapting his writing style to fit completely different musical geniuses. Take his two defining early partnerships. With Reginald De Koven, the vibe was serious. They were aiming for that European light opera feel, which gave us hits like Robin Hood and Rob Roy. But then, Smith also teamed up with Victor Herbert, this brilliant cellist and composer. Herbert's shows like The Wizard of the Nile and The Serenade leaned heavily into comedy. They were these burlesque-flavored, laugh-out-loud hits. Smith could literally craft a soaring, romantic Scottish adventure for De Koven on a Tuesday and turn around to write a gag-filled rump for Herbert on a Wednesday.
The cultural impact of these shows? Off the charts. In 1894, Smith and De Koven premiered Rob Roy, an operetta about the famous Scottish folk hero. It was such a monster hit in New York that a bartender at the Waldorf Astoria actually invented a brand new, whiskey-based cocktail just to celebrate the premiere. They colored it reddish to match Rob Roy's hair. The show even kicked off a nationwide craze for plaid fashion. So Smith wasn't just putting on plays, he was literally driving American pop culture.
Section 3. Collaborating with Broadway legends.
As musical tastes began shifting into the 20th century, Smith's career evolved right alongside them. 6,000. That is the staggering number of lyrics Harry Bache Smith penned over his incredibly prolific career, along with over 300 librettos. He was basically a one-man word factory. Literally every single year between 1894 and 1920, you could find something of Smith's being performed on Broadway. Often, he had multiple productions running at the exact same time.
And you've got to look at who he was writing for. It wasn't just the classic operetta guys anymore. He wrote the libretto for Irving Berlin's very first full score, the 1914 ragtime revue Watch Your Step. He collaborated with Jerome Kern on fresh, syncopated shows like Love O' Mike. He even penned comic operas for the March King himself, John Philip Sousa. The big takeaway here is his unbelievable adaptability. He seamlessly transitioned from the sweeping waltzes of Vienna straight into the ragtime rhythms of Tin Pan Alley, completely without missing a beat. His dialogue even became everyday American slang. "Am I a whiz?" was this massively popular catchphrase from his 1895 show The Wizard of the Nile, which he did with Victor Herbert. The star of the show, comedian Frank Daniels, had this ridiculous bit where he would magically pull an egg from another character's mouth and yell out, "Am I a whiz?" Well, years later, Daniels actually caught his English bulldog stealing eggs from his henhouse. As Daniels is patting this guilty dog's head, an egg literally pops right out of the dog's mouth. Daniels couldn't even bring himself to be mad. He just looked at his dog and shouted, "Am I a whiz?" That is how deeply Smith's snappy writing had embedded itself into the American vernacular.
Section 4. The Master Collector.
Now, here is where his story takes a really fascinating turn. While critics love to accuse Smith of being a commercial hack writing lowbrow burlesque, his private life told a completely different story. He was quietly building what he called his sentimental library. This was a meticulous, incredibly elite collection of rare books and preserved manuscripts that gave him a deep, personal insight into the creative processes of his literary heroes. We're talking personal presentation copies from Charles Dickens, autographed manuscripts by Robert Louis Stevenson, original letters from Napoleon Bonaparte. He even owned Charles Lamb's personal album. He was writing articles for high-end magazines like Scribner's and Harper's, all about his collecting methods. So the same guy churning out rapid-fire, pie-in-the-face jokes for Broadway comedians actually held this profound scholarly reverence for priceless literary history.
To really give you a sense of the scale of this collection, when his rare books finally went up for auction in 1936, they fetched $29,231. And remember, that was a massive sum during the Great Depression. His commercial theater success, those hundreds of thousands of dollars in royalties from his hits, was directly funding a top-tier literary preservation effort. The supposed hack was, in reality, a world-class literary connoisseur.
Section 5. The Legacy of Harry B. Smithing. So what do we make of all this? Well, his name literally became a verb, Harry's Bithing. Now, to the theater critics of the day, that was a derogatory term. It meant stuffing a play with tired jokes, cheap colloquialisms, and recycled plots. But to the audiences, and far more importantly, to mega-producers like Ziegfeld and the Schubert brothers, Harry's Bithing meant a well-constructed, highly entertaining, totally guaranteed financial hit. He wrote to make a living. He gave the stars exactly what they needed, and he gave the audiences exactly what they wanted. I want to share this really poignant reflection from his autobiography, First Nights and First Editions. He wrote, "Often my life seems all of the theater, a Chinese play lasting not through many nights but through many years." I think that just perfectly humanizes this supposedly unstoppable writing machine. For 50 years, he saw himself as a tradesman in the shop of the theater, just plodding uphill, building the very scaffolding upon which the modern American musical was constructed.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative question to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Does a commercial focus destroy theatrical art? Or is it the very thing that funds its evolution? Think about it. Without Harry B. Smith's rapid-fire deadlines, his wildly reliable box office hits, and his insane ability to adapt from Victorian operettas all the way to 1920s ragtime, the commercial foundation of Broadway might never have been strong enough to support the golden age that followed. He really proves that sometimes giving the people exactly what they want is the first crucial step to creating history.